So now we're starting the whole VisionHeir podcast, and VisionHeir is a LLC, and it's something separate from Tsunami. And it made sense to me to start with some people that I've been involved with for a long time in my life that mean a lot to me, you being one of them. And I think a lot of people that know me today don't really didn't get the benefit of seeing me and you kind of in action, seeing me and you kind of grow up together and
Right.
artistically develop and start to get our skills and learn about career paths and stuff like that. So I wanted to, bring you on and tell people, this is my guy Eli, known him forever. We were born on the same day, which is nuts. Um, we don't got to give too much information out. You be as private as you want. I respect your privacy, so if you want to share that, I'm not gonna share it
No,
for you.
I'm good, man. I'm good.
But nah, man, I appreciate the time, man. I appreciate the conversation. And it's interesting thinking about it now too. It's like the last, because are you still active in the military?
No, I got out in 2019.
Okay, because I say that because
Um,
Jerome was in the
yeah.
army, Oriosi was in the Navy, and then you did the army. So it's just funny how it lined up. I'm the only dummy that didn't end up going to the military. For a bunch of reasons. Actually, I got half decent reasons as to why I didn't join, but we here now. So really, the whole point is, we grew up together. We were doing music and stuff like that, and you moved to Florida and you started doing your own thing.
Yeah.
The army took you over there. How'd you end up down there to begin with?
So it was my parents wanted to make that move. They were
Uh-huh.
just like, started off in Puerto Rico, went to New York, and they were just like, yeah, we don't want our children in this environment. Because I grew up like I was living in the Marcy projects.
Hmm.
So it was like, it was a crazy, wild environment. And then they moved down to Virginia, looking for a better life. And we had something that was better, but then they were like, "Oh, we want to buy a house. We want to like establish roots."
Right.
And when they were, you know, um, taking a look at how do we want these roots to be established, they just didn't feel like Virginia was that fit for them.
Mm.
So then moved down to Virginia or down to Florida, and that's where everything kind of came about. And you know me, man. Just like you said, we grew up together, so I was like a gypsy, bro. It was like we came down to Florida. I was like, yeah, I'm not feeling this. This is too slow for me. I moved to New York, then I'm back. Then I moved to New
Right.
Jersey, and then I moved back, and then I moved to Virginia that last time, and then I decided, um, this is where my family is, and Florida at the time I felt wasn't half bad,
Hmm.
but now that itch is coming back again, and my wife was like, you know what, I will follow your lead. If
So
you
you
want
think
to leave
about
Florida,
you're leaving? You think about leaving?
yeah, we're
Think about where?
thinking about either North Carolina or Texas.
It's more property, more land for the
Yeah,
your dollar stretches further.
yeah,
That's cool.
absolutely. That
So,
and snow.
uh,
My wife wants my wife wants a white Christmas, so
you ask for that, and then you start digging out snow and to get your car out and dealing with that mess, and it's a whole different game. But at least, I mean, in North Carolina and stuff, you said North Carolina, right? Like out there, you're not gonna
yeah,
see what you see in New York and Philly. That's not gonna
right.
exist like that. So you'll see it, but you'll be able to manage. But that's dope. Nah, I get it. I mean, when we left, I was crazy young when we left New York, but it was the same reasons. It's trying to find a different life, something a little more quiet. It's not for everybody. I still love New York and got family over there, and we go visit. But every time it's like, nah, I don't see me living up there. I need the property. I need the land. I need the space. I don't want to be on top of people like that and dealing with that environment every single day, especially with kids, which is
Yeah.
wild to me that so I know you since I mean, man, we were real young. I don't even remember like what age it was, but I know Eli as a guy in middle school and high school. I know you when you started rapping. I never really got to meet Eli the father. How is Eli the father?
Um, you know, it's funny because growing up, I always thought, like I'm never gonna be like my father.
Hmm.
And yeah, no, that ended up like I'm militant, with my kids, but the one thing that I will say that's different from the way that I grew up than how I am as a father is I'm very conversational
Hmm.
with my kids. So anytime they're being reprimanded, I got an anger streak, so it's just like they do something to piss me off, and it's like I'm gonna let them have it. But then I always take time to reflect, and I sit down, like I literally will sit down with each and every kid and just be like each and every like there's a lot of them. I only got three kids, people, just three. Um, but I'll sit down with either my sons or my daughter and just be like, "Yo, this is what's going on.
Hmm.
This is why uh, I flipped out, or this is why this is unacceptable." And I try to make it as conversational as possible because um all respect to my parents. Like I love them to death and I'm not trying to down them. Um but it was growing up, it was more like do as I say.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
no conversation about it.
Hmm.
And it is what it is. And I cursed my parents for God knows how long. And then, I grew up to be a parent and then I was like, man, this is why.
I
This
think
is why this happened. This is why they felt this way, or this is why they reacted this way. So instead of my kids growing up to be a certain age and then finding that out firsthand, I want to have that conversation with them. Like, this is why.
hmm right now, and I think it's funny. I got the same, almost the same exact experience. And I've talked about it before. Friends that know me forever know my parents know we got similar upbringings. Um, but it's funny. It reminds me of. I feel like I got this theory where our parents' generation, which it seems like it's similar, their kind of upbringing too. When you come from backgrounds where you don't have a whole lot, we had enough. People say you didn't have nothing growing up, but you did. You had plenty when you really think about it.
Yeah.
You had more than what you needed. But cliche wise, you really didn't have a whole lot. And then for sure, our parents' generation had less than us, right? So I say all that to say that maybe their generation, when you're in an environment where there's a constant high level of stress, when you don't feel like you're measuring up, maybe, or maybe your family isn't where you would want it to be, stuff like that, economically and stuff like that. I think you end up taking that out on the kids, and you raise your kids a certain way. Like that aggressiveness doesn't go away as much as you try to funnel it and separate the kids. That stuff, you end up lashing out, and the lack of patience due to maybe careers not going the way you wanted to, and maybe marriage life ain't going the way you wanted to, and that lack of patience rubs off, and you just start cutting stuff short. And like you said, you don't really end up with the initiative to want to explain stuff. So my parents were similar in the whole, how we were raised. There wasn't a whole
Yeah.
lot of talking. There actually was talking when you sit back and think about it. There was plenty of talking, but to your point, it's not as much as you're doing today. Um, but you know what? I think it's a testament to your parents got you set up a little further, down the line. Like each generation, you're getting a little, the quality of life is improving. Each generation, you're learning, and that knowledge gets passed down. Because for sure, like today with my kids, I'm the same way. I talk way more. At least I think I do. I think I talk way more to my kids than my parents spoke with me. And it's just learning. It's just being in a different position and trying different strategies. And it's not even a knock to anything they did. I think I was raised the way I had to be raised. That I'm the way I am to, do 100% to the way I was raised, and I'm grateful for it. Um, but we get better, and I think today, even my parents would say, yeah, you should be talking more. That way of doing things, it's not really the absolute best way. Because I hear it now as an adult. I hear it now. So, yo, explain it a little more, be a little more patient and stuff. And I get it. It's true. Um, but it's great. Being a parent is one of the dopest things in the world. I never thought it would be what it is. Like I tell people all the time, it's like if you don't got a kid, I recommend it. It's like have
Yeah.
a kid. It's the best thing in the world, man. And I feel like as long as I'm healthy, I want to keep having kids. I don't have like a number or whatever, but I'm like, yo, as long as we're healthy and economically it makes sense and we're all good, it's like I love it. I love the process. I love seeing kids grow up and get their own personalities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Did they get to see like so? You and I grew up in church. We used to pass notebooks back and forth, and in the service we'd be writing like the whole rhymes and stuff like that, like whole verses and whole songs, right? Did they ever get to see any of that at all with you?
In
Because
what
you
respect?
because you did music not too long ago. I mean, you just finished putting out a project what, like a month or two ago?
Yeah, like a couple months ago, and so when it comes down to that process, because it's funny, like I'm recording a project right now, right, and I put out like a couple music videos,
Hmm.
and I don't really like push it on them, where it's like, yo, go listen to my new joint, like that's
Right.
I don't know. I mean, no knock for everybody, anybody that does it, but like for me, I'm just like, I like to give my kids certain freedoms, like when it
Mhm.
comes down to like some of their music choices and things of that nature. But I remember one day, it was like a family get together, and my aunt was like, "Oh, I want to see your new music video," and this and the other. And I was like, "All right, cool. Like, I'll do that." And I put it up so that she could listen to it, and my youngest son came out the room singing the chorus,
Mm.
and I was just like, "Oh snap! Like you
That's
rocking
cool.
with it?" I
Yeah,
I didn't know, because I like to I don't necessarily like to keep it um like separate, in the sense of, this is Eli the rapper, and this is Eli the father, in that regard, where it's just, I'm living two different lives. However, I like to give my kids freedoms, because I've I have similar friends and all that stuff, and they're just like, "Oh, you got to know the words to my songs, and you got to there was one dude, I'm not going to mention his name, but he Christian rapper, right? And he would have his daughters like make up dances, so that like, and it was just like, I get, that family aspect, like you want it to be like a cohesive project, or it's something that you're passionate about, and you want to include people that you're passionate with.
Hmm.
But like, why are you telling your daughters they need to come up with this dance for the song, so that it could be like, "Oh, did you see that musical family?"
Nah, you gotta earn those streams. You can't just discipline your kids into listening to your music. You gotta
Yeah,
you
bro.
gotta earn every stream, even your kids ones, man. That's not right.
Yeah,
So
so
do
I
they
was
get
like, seeing that, I
but
was like, nah, I don't want to do that.
so do you record at home? Do you take them to a studio? I mean, what's their experience with you creatively? Do they get to see that at all, or
Yeah, so I record both at home and in another studio,
Mhm.
and my daughter actually was part of one project that I put out, and it was kind of against her will. I'm
Mhm.
gonna sound like a hypocrite there. I was just like, "All right, Lauren, look, I just need you to say this, this, and this. I'm gonna put you, on this skit, just because I need somebody vulnerable, or somebody that sounds vulnerable, because of the concept." And at first she was like, "No, no, no," and then after that she was just like, "Oh, that's a song that that's the track that I was on," and
Right.
all that stuff. So
So when you're doing it, and when you're doing the music and stuff like that, have you taken it to the level of making it an actual business yet, or are you still kind of doing it because you got the passion for it and you love it? And you haven't thought that far into it.
honestly, I've been getting to a point where I want to.
Hmm.
Um, for the most part, I've always looked at it like this is my passion,
Right.
right? And because of the way that people make money with the music at this juncture, it's like, you know, streaming, bro. Like, I broke down how much money I make from like one song in the streaming. It's like 0.0037 cents
Right.
like per stream, and I was just like, "Yo, this is for the birds." I have a job that I work. I'm gonna do that, and use that as my main source of income. But as time has passed on, and I think about my children, the thing that's been most important to me is, how do I create generational wealth,
Hmm.
right? And what I've learned in America, right? In order to be in a more positive position financially, is to have multiple streams of income.
Right.
Music, we've long passed the days where somebody blows up and like they just need that cosign and all that stuff, and then they're just making millions off of albums. Like we've passed those days.
Right.
um I want to make sure that if I have a talent, I maximize on that talent, but I'm not going to look at it as my main source.
You know what I tell people in the creative space like that? Like I talk to my friends that still do music. That got quite a few that still do music, and I got a few that do photography and some that do videography. And I always tell them when you start in a business, not that I'm the big business guy and know everything, but just in my limited experience, I just share the advice that only make a business about what you're already doing for free. So if you're already rapping, if you already got a rhyme book, if you're already, streaming video games, if you're already playing them and stuff like that, if you're already drawing and stuff like that, that's what your business should be. That way, when you only get 0.15 cents on a record, on a stream or whatever, it doesn't matter because you were going to do it for free anyway.
Right.
And the only thing I tell people is once you make it a business, just make sure that now the only thing that really should change, it's the biggest part of business, is the consistency now. What you might have done maybe, twice a week or whatever on a random time, you now should put it to a schedule and do it on a consistent basis, because then you're doing what you love, and then people know when to expect it and they know when to check for you, and you start growing your audience that way. Like I said, not that I got the huge audience and I know exactly the ins and outs of it all, but in my limited experience, that's the way I've seen it work for me, where it's like you got to put it together in a plan, what you were already doing for free, and start to develop a portfolio, start to develop rapport with different people, to the point that they just, for me, it's been all referral based. We did a great job with this one person, and they're like, yo, you got to go talk to them to get a video. And that kept rolling and rolling into contracts to the point where it's like, it's at the point where it's like, yo, is it time for this to be the full-time thing? What's that look like? What's the strategy to where that becomes a full-time situation? How many months, how many different projects and stuff like that. But like you said, with the music and stuff, the hardest thing is the commitment. It's the commitment to move excuses out the way and say, I'm gonna do this every Thursday at 9 o'clock or whatever the case may be. Because that's the hardest thing. I talked to all my friends. I was talking to Drome about it recently. I talked to Arielsi. Us, as we're all fathers now, and it's real easy to be like, yo, I got kids. I don't have time to do this between a 9 to 5, between raising kids. I don't have time. And the truth is, you really do have time. It's just you got to make a crazy sacrifice. And if you have a passion for it, then you'll make that sacrifice. But I find people more oftentimes than not, they're in love with the idea of doing something for a living, but they don't love it enough to push through it at all. So as soon as the first conflict comes out, as soon as the first roadblock comes up, they back down and they go back to their comfort zone. Um, so I've been preaching for real to people. It's like self-awareness. Like, did you define your own
Right.
happiness? Figure out what you're happy about. Figure out what's going to make you happy and chase that. And there's nothing wrong with any kind of path at all. There's no right career path that fits everyone. Some people are going to love certain things. Some people want to own a business. Some people don't. Neither one of them is better than the other. Um, but lately, I find people that, the entrepreneur thing is like the buzzword these days, and business owners, the small businesses, the buzzword. And it's like, if you want to be that, there's a certain expectation, and you're not going to
Right.
complain your way out of it. You just have to deal with it and deal with it head on. And that's what I've been pushing people. I'm like, look, I'm not the most talented person in the room. I'm not the smartest person in the room. But one thing I do have is when I want something, I'm good at executing a plan and sticking to it. And if I say I'm going to do it, historically, I have done it. And those are not issues I have to necessarily deal with. I just got to, summon up the energy myself. I've been doing that my whole life. It's I've been around a lot of people that push in one direction, and I've been by myself. It's always worked out for the best in the end. How are you doing managing your time now that you got 3 kids and a job? How do you handle, like, so when you say I want to put out a project, like I want to put out an album out, I want to do a music video, how do you maneuver that whole situation?
So, it's I don't sleep much.
Mm,
uh, you know, I'll say that. But it actually goes to what you're saying, because like if there's one thing that anybody has, known about me, or whatever the case is, or if there's anything that people say about me, is that I'm a passionate person.
mhm.
Regardless of what it is that I'm pursuing or doing, I'm passionate about it. And when you're passionate about something, be it work, be it the creative process, be it, parenting, be it dating your wife or whatever the case is, when you're passionate about something, you make the time.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. So like for me, my wife knows. Like I do, my wife is a scheduler. Me, I'm like fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. Like I'm just like, yo, you know what? I'm like feeling this right now. So I'm just gonna do this. And it's just like,
Right.
I've learned to have that conversation with her and schedule it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're gonna have like I'm gonna be in the studio X amount of times a month.
Mm-hmm.
These are the days I'm gonna do it. You know what I'm saying? So that we don't have any scheduling conflicts.
Yeah.
Me and my wife set time aside for ourselves, right? We have what we do like a family date night where we do something and all of that. So
Right.
especially in the creative process, because it's hard to explain the creative process to somebody that's not necessarily a creative, right? Because uh, for any creative, like they get into the zone at some point, and then it's like hard to turn it off
Mm-hmm.
because once you're inspired, like everything seems to inspire you that just
Mm-hmm.
goes on around you, and you're just like trying to cram that in so that you could communicate your soul, like you could communicate your heart, you could communicate what's going on inside of you. So I've learned to navigate that process.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always easy, right? Because sometimes it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm laying next to my wife and I'm like on my phone writing rhymes because these things just keep coming to mind.
Right.
But it's about making that time. It's about making the sacrifice. If you love it, you want to see something from it. You just gotta set the time aside to do it. Regardless, it's less about um, that me time where you're doing idly nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That sometimes as parents we can get comfortable with, because
Right.
when you're juggling kids and helping with homework, or you're going to a volleyball game or whatever the case is, sometimes you just literally want to do nothing because that's the only
Mm-hmm.
time you
Mm-hmm.
get to do
Mm-hmm.
nothing.
Nah,
And
that's
I've learned that in that time where I'm like, oh, I could just be doing nothing right now, just because nothing's going on. um in my mindset, I want to be productive.
mm-hmm.
And if I'm not being productive, then I'm stagnant. And if I'm stagnant, I'm unhappy.
Right. Now, the same thing you said about creatives and stuff like that. Like you get in the zone. I taught Jerome and I had that conversation all the time, and it's funny because we've said the same thing. One of the challenges getting married, I had to learn, to do better by my communication. Specifically, in the last few years, I've been more conscious of the fact that I got to be more effective with my communication emotionally and talk about what's going on in my head and in my heart versus being so driven about executing this, that, and the other. And when you're talking about, you get in the zone musically, I laugh because me and Jerome were joking about how, like, when you're writing, we'll find an empty room in the house and it's like, yo, don't open that door. Like, don't come through the room like I'm writing. And it's like, how many arguments have you had with your wife or your girlfriend when it's like, yo, I'm writing and you came in to like ask me, hey, you want to drink? Hey, you want whatever? It's like, yo, I know you're trying to be sweet. Now's not the time. This bar is being written right now. Like this goes over everything. And the thing is, it's like you said, unless you're like in the arts, I don't know if it's easily understood that muse, that inspiration, when you get in that wave, like it like heats you up, like you're ready to go, and you start writing, and it's real easy to take you out of that too. It's easy to break that, and like it's frustrating. It's like, yo, I had that for a minute, I'm not going back. Like, I'm not gonna write rhymes and then go have a debate with you about something and then go right back to the rhymes. Like, that's a wrap on the rest of the day for the bars. Like, there's no more after that, and it's frustrating because it's like I don't force music. I never done that.
Right.
I write like crazy. I still do. I haven't put out an album out in years, but I still got rhyme books on top of rhyme books. I'm always writing something. And whenever I do it, it's like when I'm alone. When I'm alone. Jerome made a funny comment. He said that, when somebody will come over, he'll tell them he wants absolute silence in the room. He'll tell them the idea phase is over. He's like, you just sit down and be quiet. All right. I don't need input. I don't I don't need any kind of any kind of input, any kind of recommendation or something like that. Just leave me be and let me do my thing. But like I said, communicating that has been important because at first it was a friction point. So yeah, I'm coming in here to try to be nice. I'm trying to, check if you want something to eat. I'm trying to check if you want something to drink or whatever. And I had to understand like these problems will go away if you start communicating how you feel, how you think,
Right.
what's important to you, what's your passion and stuff like that, and just explain it. It'll go away. People understand way more than I realize if you just actually talk. Because I'm the king of like have my mind made up and then demanding that everybody else understand where I'm going with something without necessarily articulating like here's where we're going and here's how we're gonna do it. Um, so how are you dealing with managing? Because I'm talking about basically the issues emotionally when you're dealing with different relationships, right? And you've been big
Right.
on mental health. You've been big on understanding yourself, living because you live in your brain as much as I do, probably more.
Right.
Um, and that's been it's funny like when I think back to relationships that kind of fell apart, they probably didn't have to at least the way they did if I'd have communicated a whole lot earlier when I saw yellow flags and red flags. Because I got this thing that I say, when you really love somebody, then you tell them you're messing up. You tell them like if Eli offends me, you be like, yo, I didn't like that. That's I'm not rocking with that. I care about you. I care about the relationship so much that I want to express that this hurt me. And if I don't, the relationship's gonna fall apart because I'm gonna end up resenting you and we're just gonna go our separate ways. So I learned that. How do you deal with that? Because you did a whole series about mental health. You did, you had your own experience with that. How do you deal with just as a man that's being creative and that has a career? How do you deal with just expressing yourself emotionally to the people in your house?
It's funny because I'm going now on 10 years being married, right?
Me too.
And
That's
for
funny.
like, say what?
Me too. That's funny that it's around the same time.
Yeah, pretty much. Yo, same day, like we're almost the same person sometimes. But so I think for like the first s- probably like the first 7 years, it was just I'm I've been guilty of just compartmentalizing.
Mm,
Something happens, stuff it in a box. We're just gonna push that down, and for years and years, that just built up and built up and built up to a point where like I exploded, and there was like so many emotions,
mm,
and I didn't know how to communicate any of those emotions because I was just on this like Incredible Hulk world breaking rampage, and it it although that was an ugly time for me, it made me understand why communication is important. Because so many
mhm,
times we hear it like, oh, if you just communicate, things will go, better. But my mindset in my earlier years is, yeah, but the way that you see me is I'm a jerk. I'm a freaking jerk. So anytime I say anything that I'm feeling or thinking, you're gonna take it some kind of way. So I'm just not gonna say anything at all. Not gonna say anything at all. And
Why do
that
you think you don't say
culminates
anything?
into to very unhealthy uh a very unhealthy lifestyle, very unhealthy behaviors that you carry out. So I've learned that just taking time to just slow everything down and just speak candidly,
Hmm.
whether it's with my wife or whether it's with my children or whether it's like peer to peer. You have to really sit down and say, listen, I'm going to speak from the entirety of my heart, and I hope that you understand that I'm hurting when I say this. Now, it's not a thing of wanting to offend somebody because they offended you or whatever the case is, but if you're not honest with one another, then there is no relationship. There is no real relationship. It's just a game of manipulation. It's a bad, bad way. But I've learned that just sitting down and being honest and just laying it out is so much better than saying, "Oh, I'm not going to say this because I'm going to offend them," and then you grow with some sort of resentment, and then that turns into something that's just wildly unhealthy.
How come?
So
I was gonna say, how
yeah,
come? How come you think you didn't say anything back then? Because I'm gonna tell you, I'll answer the question from my perspective. I had a hard time. I realized now, later in the years, that I was having a hard time saying how I felt about things because I didn't feel like I had permission. Ain't the word, but it's kind of like the first thing that comes to mind. I feel like I didn't have the freedom, maybe permission. Maybe I didn't have. Maybe there was a pride thing there, to be weak around specifically the people I love. I feel like there was this expectation where you got to be a certain level, you got to be level headed, you got to be the one kind of driving the ship the entire time. And lately, as recent as like a year or two ago, I started telling people, yo, right now, I feel like I'm at my breaking point. I might look calm. I feel like these things are going on. I need people to understand that the agitation, here's where it's coming from. Mentally, I'm at the point where I can't put anything else in my head and in my heart. I'm overwhelmed with XYZ. And this is why you're going to catch me lashing out. This is why you're going to catch me, addressing things a certain way. But I think it came from, yeah, it came from years growing up. Kind of the mentality that a lot of Hispanics grow up in, where it's like, nah, you don't cry, no, you don't talk about how you feel, you don't do that, not
right,
as a man, you don't do that, don't and a lot of those things necessarily aren't bad inherently, um but on the other side of it, as we get different strategies as parents with our kids, we have to explain that the way I tell my kids today is I don't necessarily say don't cry, I don't leave it there, I say don't cry in public. I say be careful who you cry in front of, be careful who you show your emotions to, because the way I was raised, and you probably the same way, it was you don't show emotions, period. Don't show them
yeah,
to your parents, don't show them to your cousins, you don't show them to anyone. So now as a married man, it's hard. It's hard to tell somebody, me at 36 years old, to say, I feel like this. I feel hurt. I feel worried about this. It's hard. And I'm learning that, what, if you communicate that, a lot of times you get better results in terms of getting people to kind of, move as a unit versus stopping to spend time and fight with each other. And nobody's really saying exactly how they feel, because there's this, this worry, there's this defense up, even with the people we love the most, where it's like, nah, I'm not going to let you in. I'm not going to let you see me weak. I'm not going to let you see what scares me. And I'm learning to move past that. And I think you kind of had that same experience. I don't know, because I didn't grow up in your house, but
right.
we had so many similarities from where we came from, and kind of how our parents are and were. Where it's like, I'd imagine some of that kind of is like with you. Like, I imagine is at some point it's like, nah, I don't want to. I don't feel comfortable telling you how I feel.
Yeah, we did have a very very similar upbringing. Something that I think it's there are these consequences that happen when you grow up in a certain atmosphere. And one of them was, when I grew up, and it wasn't even just my household. I think it was also the environment that you and I grew up in. It's just that you don't cry.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're a man and you cry, if you're a male and you cry, then you're weak, and you are just, like you're less than a man, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you got to walk around with this pride of like, no, I'm machismo, and this is the way that we get down and all that stuff. But then I started to create a complex, um that you know I'm 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 not supposed to cry because crying makes me less of a man, but I'm also not supposed to cry because nobody cares. Nobody genuinely cares.
Mm-hmm.
People act like they care. People feel or seem like they want to care. But if it's not central to how they're feeling, right, then it's just not important. So I think that was not I think that was the mentality that I started to culminate. And what's funny is that mentality may be true in some cases when you're talking about, like, work relationships, or when you deal with colleagues of any sort. But I took that mentality into my marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like, if it's not centered around my wife's feelings or whatever, she doesn't care. like she's not gonna really care about what's going on with me because I'm the man. I'm the
Right.
man in this relationship. I'm the head of the household. This is the way that I have to carry myself. And it wasn't until like I got to my breaking point that my wife was like, I've been all ears waiting for you to talk to me. And I was like, man, if I'd have known that 7 years ago,
Mm.
we'd be in a different place now.
But to throw you to shoot you some bail, give you the olive branch a little bit. I think in my experience, and again, I'm trying not to speak for you, but it sounds so similar. It's funny. In my experience, it's like sometimes when you speak, um, we kind of need to learn to listen to the way other people communicate as well. I tell people all the time, like, don't get upset when somebody doesn't respond the way you want them to respond. You got to appreciate that not everybody's 100% is going to be exactly the same. Not everybody's going to articulate and express their passion the same exact way. Not everybody's going to express what they care about the same exact way. So I think in the past, if I expressed something I was upset about, worried about, whatever, and I didn't get exactly the reaction I wanted, I might assume that the person's not listening to me at all. And it's like maybe they are listening, they just not
Yeah.
expressing it the way I'm used to, or the way I would think I'd express it myself. And we got to remember we're not dealing with ourselves. We're dealing with people that compliment us, not necessarily our mirror image. It's just it doesn't work that way. And it's funny. You said 10 years and like around 7 years to start to work out, and it's the same exact experience for me. Now, if you ask my dad, he'll tell you that 30 years later, they still haven't worked it out. It's still the same fights. It's still the same arguments. And to an extent, I understand that. And to an extent, I feel like there's certain arguments you're gonna have with your wife, at least in my experience, that you're just gonna have forever and ever. It's certain ones. It's just I don't know what it is. It's like, are we ever gonna get to the point where we don't argue about nothing? It's like, nah, that ain't gonna happen. I guess I don't see it. Um, and I tell people too, it's like when the fights stop, that's when you need to be afraid. Because I said it a bunch of times. I didn't make it up. I read it somewhere. It's like hate is not the opposite of love. It's indifference.
Yes.
Soon as you stop caring, as soon as you're not arguing no more, you stop caring. It's like I'm fighting because I care for this relationship. I'm fighting with you and yelling because I want this relationship to last and I want it to be a certain way, and I don't see it that way. When you get to the point where it's like we ain't got to talk, I'm gonna do me, you do you. That's it. The love is hurt. It's not too long before you just move on and do your own thing for real. Um, and that's tough. It's hard for me to manage because some self awareness on my side. I am perfectly comfortable in my own company. I've learned that I at no point do I ever feel like I need someone next to me. I've never felt that way where it's like my life is gonna stop if I don't have XYZ. I've had to
Right.
learn to first of all not treat people that way because that's toxic. That's terrible. Um, and to express it better in the way it's not that I don't need anybody near me, but I don't need anybody near me. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
don't. It's like I'd be fine. I'd be fine on my own. I don't want to be, and I love the way my life is, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Um, but there's something here where like I say all that to say that there have been arguments and there have been times just like I can go the whole month without saying a word. It's nothing to me. I can do this, and that's not necessarily the best way to handle it. It's not because in the end you're gonna talk it out anyway. Um, and it's a lot of pride issues to deal with. Like we said, you grow up a certain way. You grow up being told, "Look, man, we demanded." When you don't have a lot of stuff growing up, you end up demanding quick reactions to discipline. It's like, do
Yeah.
this now. I don't have the patience. Go do this right now. I don't want to hear any feedback. I don't want to hear an opinion. You go do it, and that's it. You liable to get smacked right in your mouth for saying anything at all in response to go do X, Y, Z. Um, and it's terrible, but that's the way we end up bringing those habits over to the marriage, and a marriage doesn't work that way. It doesn't at all. Because what I try to remind myself too is like that person you married to has just as much pull in the house as you do. And if they
Yeah.
started playing the same game with you and they started telling you this is the way it's gonna be or else, yeah, I might as well just get divorced immediately. You might as well just walk away from it all. It's not gonna work if everybody's just pulling in opposite directions. And you know what? My money's mine. I'm gonna do whatever I want. Oh yeah, well, my money's mine. I'm gonna do whatever I want. It's like, what you married for? What's the point? And especially when you
Right.
got kids, like when you got kids, that's been one of the biggest self-awareness moments too. It's like you have an audience now. It's different. It's different when you're single or not single. It's different when you don't have kids. When
Right.
there's that phase where you don't necessarily have kids, um, You can have different conversations. You say things differently to each other, but then you wake up one day and you got a kid standing next to you, and you got to remember that these kids are not going to do what you tell them to do. They're going to do what they've seen. That's why it's important. And I talk to people about careers, and I talk to people. That's why I ask you, like, are your kids around when you're expressing yourself creatively and stuff like that? Because if they're not, that's cool. I understand it. We all got time constraints and stuff like that. But I think it's important that each father to involve their kids, or at least if you're not going to directly involve them, try to do stuff in their presence. Try to be, have them as a witness to certain things going on, because these kids are truly going to emulate what they see. You could tell them a million times, but they're only going to do what they seen. That's it. And you can't fault them later when they grow up doing exactly what they saw versus, nah, I told them. I told them. In
Yeah.
Spanish, we got a saying that nobody learns from somebody else's head, their own experiences. Somebody else's experience. They don't. We say you would want to. I want to learn from somebody else's failures. You don't. You really don't. You got to bump your own head a million times before you actually learn that lesson. But that's the way things are, and I appreciate the lessons I get from being a parent now. I appreciate it. Um, in terms of, I've had to sharpen my skill set in terms of time management. I can make the excuse. I got 3 kids too. I got 3 kids. I work a ton of hours, on the day job and in the business that I don't even like calling a side business, because it's truly my passion and my priority.
Right.
I don't treat it like a side business at all. It's got to the point where I've realized, no, this is a real business. I tell everybody I have 2 jobs. I have 2 full-time jobs, is what I tell everyone. And I truly treat it that way, and I truly feel like that. And the kids see it. My son, he's 6 years old, and just 2 days ago, I don't ever put ideas in their heads intentionally. But the other day I sat down, I had worked the entire day. I woke up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I worked until 11 o'clock at night. And he saw me sit down, and he said, "It's not fair that daddy has to work the whole day just to sit down for a couple hours at night." He said this at 6 years old. And his mother says he's doing that for us. And those moments I appreciate, because I'm like, these are the things that I hope, these are the lessons he grows up understanding, that you got to work to get it. Don't go complaining. Don't go with your hand out expecting somebody else to give it to you. Don't go saying, "Oh, I don't have XYZ because I didn't get the help." You saw your dad do it. You saw him do it. You saw him wake up early. You saw him stay in front of the computer the entire day and sit down for 1 hour, go to sleep, and wake back up and do it again. So we just got to remember as an audience. And I push people all the time. If you got a business, push through it. Push through it if you got a passion. But at the same time, it's like I tell people, if you start making excuses too, don't beat yourself up. Stop lying to yourself. Be honest with yourself. Be content with yourself, and know that this particular passion, hobby, whatever, is not for me. It is what it is. It's just a hobby. What is
Yeah.
wrong with having hobbies? I don't understand that with people. What is so wrong with just a hobby being a hobby? Why do we have to fake it and act like this is a whole full blown business? I'm an entrepreneur. I'm this. I'm that. If you like rapping every now and then because that's what you enjoy, then do that. Now, if you're doing it enough where it's like, yo, like I said, why not just put an LLC behind it? An LLC costs like $100, depending on the state you're in. In Virginia, it's $100, and you can start earning a couple dollars. And I tell people all the time, if you're at an LLC, there's certain things you could deduct from your taxes that you were going to buy anyway. So you're going to buy a microphone, you're going to buy speakers, you're going to buy a computer. All that stuff could have been a legitimate business expense. You essentially threw that money away. Not really, but on paper you did. I don't want to say buying stuff for your passion is just throwing it away, but as far as IRS is concerned, you threw that money away.
Right. And that's the thing too, like about that particularly, like music, I'd love to pursue it in a different avenue.
Mm-hmm.
But much like I'm creative in a bunch of different ways, and I want to be able to push um all of those things in a way where it would benefit my family, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to be out here like, oh yeah, he made it, like, oh, that's the rapper guy. Like, there's more to it than that. But something that I've learned over the years is that everything's a business. Doesn't matter, like anything that everything's a business, right? And if you don't treat it as such, then it's a hobby, right? There's just do stuff because you enjoy it. But when you want to see some sort of return, right? You got to do the homework to make sure that you're doing that efficiently, to make sure that you're doing things effectively. Because just like you said, right? You could buy microphones, an interface, pop filter, you get the little cradle and all that stuff, and all of those things are cool and everything like that. But in the IRS, when there's not an entity that encapsulates everything the way that it should, then it's just that was you, man. That's your little hobby on the side like that. And like you said, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, when I'm passionate about something like music or podcasting or whatever the case is, I want to go into it um, with as much knowledge that I can to get the best outcome that I can get. And once again, it's not about being bigger than the next guy or whatever the case is, but it's about maximizing your own potential.
Mm-hmm.
And I I feel like I'm in a place where I've put out so much music, but I haven't done enough homework to really say, how do I maximize this? How do I make this the best that it can be for the sake of the work that you put into it? Because I'll tell you what, man, crafting an album, right? The album could be anywhere from 7 to 10 songs with today's public consumption, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They want 2.5 minute songs,
Yep.
1.5 minute songs, whatever the case is. Um, and people will rock with it for the 30, 40 minutes that it goes, and it's cool. But then nobody sees the hours of recording, the hours of mixing,
I'll be
the
jaded with
hours
you
of
and tell you.
mastering.
I'll be jaded with you and tell you nobody cares.
Right, right.
Nobody
And
cares.
it, it's interesting. It's interesting to me because for so long I was just like, oh, people are just gonna appreciate it because it's art, and it's like there's more to it than that, and that's something that I'm striving to learn more about now.
But you know what
Um,
happens, and I tell this to people too. I need to practice this more, um, because I've said this a million times, and I myself got to take my own advice. My friends that are writing music and stuff like that specifically, and even in the video and photography world, I tell them I feel like us as creative people have built up this scenario to where we're already pretending we have this large audience that's judging every single move we make. And I tell
yeah,
people all the time, the reality is nobody knows who the heck you are. Nobody knows, nobody cares.
right.
The reality is you're gonna get 2, 3 streams. On a good day, you probably get 200, 300. You know what? You might get 1,000, and you're gonna be bragging to your friends. I got 1,000 views because all of a sudden the views is all that matters, the likes, and you go start going through the Spotify stream. And guess what? If you add them all up, I got 3,000 views. Good for you. Your mortgage is still doing the first, and then they're not gonna accept views for payment. It don't matter. Um, but I tell people, we need to get into the habit of understanding. We just need to accept the reality that first of all, we have no audience. We don't. And if you did, you also got to accept the fact that you're not as unique as you think you are. That's something else I've been like a broken record about. We're very unique people, but all of our personalities fit in a couple different buckets. You know that you're a psychology dude, and you understand the way emotions work. There's like 6 or 7 different personalities that exist. That's it. Everybody can be categorized into these things. So we're not as super unique as we think, to where it's like, no, I gotta worry about this audience. It's like, be you, because the people that are like you and like the music you like will find you. Just be consistent. Do what you do on a consistent basis. Do the best you can do. It doesn't even have to be perfect. Dudes have gotten famous off garbage product. You listen to
Yeah,
the first demo that blew them up, or the first project that, the first movie, the first couple pictures, it was trash by comparison. But what people notice, you can't fake passion. People gravitate to that. That's the passion is going to be way more. The authenticity is going to be way more powerful than the actual quality of the product. So I've been pushing people to say, yo, if you want to rap, if you want to make videos, go out there and do it. Worry about the audience the day that you actually have an audience. I feel like metrics have destroyed art. Like this whole metric driven art bit, like it has no place for it. Like stop worrying about how many likes and I got to do the song. And you know what? Like I would hate the point where it's like, okay, so you started making an album on this particular theme, but then you found out that this one song that you yourself probably felt like it was the weakest song on your album, all of a sudden that one got 1 million streams, and that's the one I got to make more songs like that. It's like, why? Like be who you are. I tell people I make the videos that I want to see. I make the music that I want to hear. That's as far as I think about it. I don't think what's the latest bop, what's the latest thing. It's funny. So privately, I'll share this with the audience of nobody that's gonna watch this because it doesn't matter. But I've been working on an album myself, right? And that was the whole, you know this, and I've said it before actually. It's not a big
Yeah.
secret. VisionHeir Productions, this LLC that I started, was based on having a home for my music because I'm getting heavily back into the music as far as distributing it to the public. I've always been with the music. I've always still been making beats and fooling around with stuff and writing songs. But now I've made the intention, and you know what? This year I'm going to put out an actual professional project. And I say all that to say that I've gotten to the point where I'm only going to make the music I like. I got songs where it's, yeah, like you mentioned, kind of like the expectation these days is a 2 minute song, and it's like there's no 16 bar verses. There's 12 bar verses and a 4 bar hook, and you're out. Sometimes there's
Yeah.
two hooks and one verse, and you're out. Um, right now on this project, the day I put it out, you're gonna find entire songs where it's like 4 minutes straight, no hook, bars the whole way, and I don't care. I don't care what the format is. I don't care what people want to hear. I don't care what you want to hear. Like, this is what I want to do. This is my expression and the way I feel about things. And I say that to say I got a great wife because some of the songs I'm doing, and I don't know how far you've taken it, but I got songs where I'm like super open about my feelings, super open about fights I've had and ways I've felt in the marriage. And the way I put it is, you know what? I explained to my wife, I need you to understand that this is a way I felt, not the way I'm feeling. And I'm expressing this in music because that's how I felt in the moment. And I like talking about my real experiences. I don't like faking nothing. If this is how I felt at a point, I have the artistic freedom to get in there and talk about feelings I've had in the past. And I don't ever get pushback about that. Like, no, no, no. I got a particular song that I went in. I went in on my feelings. I went in.
Yeah. I gotta hear that one.
I went in. I went in. Jerome actually heard it, and he was like, "It sounded like a smack battle." He was like, "That was with your wife." I was like, "Yeah." I went in there. I said, "Yo," and just went off. Um, but it's important to me. It's important to me
Yeah.
to get those, to work those emotions out. And like I said, I wouldn't. At least I would hope I wouldn't. But I don't think I would put out a song like that in the moment that I'm feeling that way. It's not the wisest thing to do necessarily to just air out dirty laundry. If I'm airing it out, it's because it's old news in the house. It might be new to everybody else hearing it, but this is old news. We've been way past this when I'm rapping
Right.
about it. And that's a dope feeling too. It's dope to have, the experience of writing about the things we wrote about when we were kids, and now it's like now the wives can get it too. It's
Yeah.
like,
It's funny because now we're like, I mean, and I say now, but I mean it's been like 3 years that things have been like drastically, changing from the first 7 years. But I'm comfortable in a place where I'm able to talk about my feelings, both on record, right, or like here on a podcast, um, without my wife feeling some type of way, or without me like worrying about like, yo, am I gonna have some sort of repercussions to deal with and all that stuff.
mm.
Um, now, sometimes I may talk out of turn. I'm a human, bro. Like that happens. But we're in a place where where even if it's artistic or if it's just me being me, we're able to like sit down and just be like, yo, this is what's going on. Like I know you understand because I could we could act like marriage is always sunshine and rainbows, right? But there are some of the same fights that we're having every day, and it's just like, why are we still fighting about this?
Well,
And all this stuff. But having that open communication makes it where it's like, yo, um, you know how I feel about this. Like that hasn't changed or whatever the case is. As long as as long as I'm not putting putting it in a way where I'm disrespecting my wife, right? Like I'm not like calling her out of her name or just airing out something that she's not comfortable with, then it's fair game. It's
the
part of the
disrespect
creative process.
the disrespect comes into play in an argument when you have lost the argument. When you have lost the ability to articulate the way you feel, and now it's just like, now I'm gonna just start insulting you and shut you up. That's all I have left because I can no longer explain myself effectively. So let me just hurt your feelings. Um, I used to ask myself all the time, and I had this. I'm real careful with saying God told me this and God told me that, but I had a feeling. I felt the feeling where I got to a point arguing. I'm like, yo, how many times am I supposed to forgive this person? How many times am I supposed to have the same argument? And a thought came into my head: as many times as you would want me to forgive you, that's how many times you're supposed to forgive that person. As many times as you would want me to have the same argument with you, that's how many times I want you to have the same argument with that person. And that cold bucket of ice water perspective, I try to remember as often as I can. Whenever I get really upset, how much patience am I supposed to have with this person? As much patience as you would want me to have with you. That's how much. So you decide. Because the way I see it is like in my head, I'm like, I had that conversation in my head with God, and I'm like, maybe he's sitting there saying, you know what? You don't have to be patient. That's fine. You set the rules, right? The next time you mess up, we're gonna play by your rules. I'm not gonna have
Right.
patience. We could do that. We can do this all day. If that's how you want to do it, that's fine. You're allowed to do that. You want to be super authoritative in the house and nobody ever makes a mistake, that's fine. I'll co-sign it and let you do it. You have my blessing. Now, the next time you mess up, I'm coming on you with all the authority and wrath that you expect to have in your house. So I learned to kind of I hope I seek I push to be better that way and just remembering just have grace because people have had grace with you because God has had grace with you because you know what, we're not perfect, we're gonna mess up, and let people mess up, let people grow. I don't like being held accountable for things 30 years ago. I already beat myself up about it enough. In my mind, I tell my wife specifically, and I'll share it public here, just a small glimpse. I tell my wife all the time, I deal with self-esteem issues all the time. I deal with in my head, I don't measure up to the next person. I don't. And in some ways, I don't shy away from that anymore because I feel like it's important to have some humility. And I don't ever want to dead serious feel like I'm better than everybody else. I joke around about it. I was talking to Odiosi about that. Like we joke around like we're hot stuff. In my head, I never really believe it. I never believe I'm
Right.
better than the next guy. I'll joke with my closest friends and tell them they suck at this and oh, no, I destroyed you on the track and I'll joke around about that stuff, but I don't ever in my heart of hearts ever feel that way. I don't go to sleep thinking I'm better than everybody that's around me. I will say, you know what's funny? I'll be honest and say I do go to sleep some days and feel like I have more drive than a lot of people around me, but I don't feel like I'm better. Like I'm better than this person or that person. I feel like
Right.
maybe my focus is a little sharper than some people around me sometimes, but I don't ever think I'm better.
You know, you said something that's like super key, and I think that it's something that we should normalize, right? Like for a man, right? And we talked about our upbringing where it was just like, you had to be, macho and everything like that. But like, there's not too many men that would actually, say, hey, you know what? I deal with self-esteem issues,
Mhm.
right? Because typically, and I'm not trying to break the internet or anything like that with saying something ignorant, but typically whenever people talk about like self-esteem issues, they always attribute that to like girls with daddy issues.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's a lot of men
I get it.
that have issues with their self-esteem, but they don't like, they either don't have anyone to have that accountability conversation, or they've inflated their pride to a point where it's just like, I can't talk about this because I've
Mhm.
created this character, right? That doesn't suffer from this sort of stigma. And for years, man, I remember, um and for those that don't really know us in our element, you and I were very competitive
Mhm.
toward one another, when it came down to rhymes. Like,
Mhm.
it was just like, and I've always attributed you to being the better MC, um because of your poise, right? I have a more brash delivery, and I've always been like super reckless. Like, if anybody watches the Boondocks, like, you're Huey and I'm Riley. You know what I'm saying? And
But it's
and I've
different.
always
It's
I've always respected that about you, but it's been um I always looked at you with this, like, this sort of ambiance, like you were better, not because you portrayed being better, but it was just the way that you took you approach situations versus the way that I approach them and everything like that. I was always like, man, this dude is like, I want to be as sure of myself as Tony is of sure, as sure as of himself.
Nah, I
And
mean, I
that's
hear
a
you.
that's a that's a weird mentality, because then you talk to me and you're just like, nah, man, I'm not that sure all the time. Like, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes I think that we need to break the stigmas of that macho or that pride thing, and just like have a real one-on-one.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it, but I get what you're saying, and it's just different ways of going about stuff because I don't think it's necessarily better. I understand what you mean, but for me, it's like, um, how I put it, it's not that I don't have the answer to everything. I don't. What I'm 100% sure of is that what I'm passionate about, I will not give up on. I won't. I'm
Right.
100% sure of that. I'm 100% sure of the people I love, I won't give up on. I don't. Um, and I'm 100% sure that adversity, a failure, doesn't slow me down. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't make me stop. For some reason, I'm wired that way. Maybe it's because so much of my life has been put up against some low expectations by society, by people around me, not necessarily my family. My family's been super supportive my whole life, but it's funny. You start to see things through the lens of people outside of your house. I don't know why it works that way, but it's like we never truly see ourselves the way our parents see us. It's like we see ourselves the way we think our friends see us. And when you're a guy and you're raised in the environment we were raised in, it comes off as aggression. It comes off as I don't want to see, I don't want you to see me weak. I want you to see me strong at all times. And sometimes the easiest route to that is to be super aggressive, to be the loudest guy in the room, to be the toughest, meanest dude in the room. Well, it's like I'm this way because I don't want you to see me weak. And I don't want you to see me weak for a whole bunch of reasons, because I've been betrayed, because I had my heart broke, because people have made fun of me. I mean, I can go back to when I was real young. It's funny when people are real passionate and they live in their head and in their heart the way we do. It's like the most minor thing when I was a kid. Somebody made fun of me about XYZ. That stuff, that little seed, like it's like it never goes away. And it just
Right.
you find ways that it just continues to contribute to your character. And it's like you wake up and you're like, wait a minute. It might seem silly as an adult, but back when I was 9, 10 years old, those jokes actually affected me and they made me really aggressive when I was 16, 17, and 18 years old. And then how does that affect later how you raise your kids? And how does that affect later how you manage your time? Because it goes full circle. I could definitely see a situation where it's like being the aggressive cliche alpha male in the house. It's like, nah, I don't care about how anybody feels, including my family. I'm gonna go drive and push and get my goal, because you know what the goal is for the family. It's like the goal could be for the family, but it's not at the detriment of the family. You don't
Right.
sacrifice the family to put them in a better place. It doesn't make sense. And I think that's a trap that some people could fall into. You sacrifice the family for the family when
It's
you really
funny
sit
you
down and
say
think about
that,
it.
because that um those were the examples, and outside of my parents. My parents, they set like this great foundation for me. But growing up, I was just like, oh, this is like too perfect for me. Like, I gotta, like I'm not, like, I've always been like a black sheep. So I always looked outside. And that was the mentality that I grew up with, seeing that practice over and over.
Right.
Like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. And my family's gonna suffer along the way, but at the end it'll all be better. Now there's um sacrifice. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's a negative, it has a negative connotation.
Right.
However, like you said, some people will literally sacrifice every aspect of family in the name of doing better for the family. And typically in those scenarios, you never see it play out the way that you think it would.
You end up losing the
um
family.
and that's one of the reasons why, I think me and the military had to part ways,
Mm.
because that is a mentality that's kind of like bred there. and I'm not taking away from being patriotic, but they I had some leaders that it was just like, whatever you do, you're doing for them.
Right.
And you could do whatever you want along the way, even if it hurts them. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's sacrificing everything. You deserve, X, Y, and Z. And I started to kind of play into that when in my early career, but I was like, but I feel like I had enough sense to sit back and say, but am I still gonna have a family when everything is said and done?
Right.
Or,
Right.
to your point, right? When we're growing up, there are all these little seeds that are planted, right? And it culminates into the person that you grow up to be. Um, I had to sit back and think, like, what kind of seeds am I planting with my kids when I do this?
Right.
Because the last thing that I want, um, is for my kids to have as much of a damaged mentality as I used to have. Like that's for any parent that loves their children, they wanna avoid that part. You can't
Right.
avoid all negativity in the world, right? But you want to learn from your experiences and say, yeah, I don't want my kid feeling this type of way or growing up thinking that this is okay for them, because it only damages them moving forward.
Right. Nah, it's important, especially as people with kids now, man. Married people with kids, it's the legacy. That's what we always talk about. You
Yeah.
got projects that you did about legacy. You've been big on legacy even since we were kids. It's legacy. Um, and that's kind of instilled from the parents too. We come from backgrounds where the parents kind of told us that they had less growing up, and that's why they're working to get us in better places. Um, I don't believe my grandparents necessarily had probably nothing close to what my parents have, and I'm pushing to have more than my parents, in their lifetime had, when they were younger. That's why it was important to me to have a house of my own by a certain age, not for some pride issue, but because in my mind, I've got to push further, faster, so my kids could have that same drive and push fast, quick. I tell them all the time, just have a plan by the time you leave high school. Just that's the legacy I want to leave them, is just to show them that no matter what, you could do whatever you want. Just make sure that you take it seriously. Make sure you put a plan to it. I don't care. I tell them specifically, you want to do hair, you want to be a video game streamer, you want to be a graphic artist, be whatever you want, but you better take it serious. Put it to a schedule, create a business out of it. Or if you're gonna go work for somebody, you better learn, the right skills and go to college and do what you need to do. I don't force them in the college path either, but I'm just like, have a plan. Understand, do some research about what you want to do. Go, and go do what you love the most. I don't see a point in going to do what you hate for 10 years while you try to do what you love. I don't necessarily get that too much, especially in 2021. There's ways to do it now. Kids should capitalize on the time that they live with their parents. And if you want to pursue a passion, you need to do it while you still live at home. Take advantage of that time. And then that way you could just off rip always be doing what you love. That way you don't have to juggle and live through the stuff that we're living through now. That's like kind of like the lesson I want the kids now to understand. It's like, you can do it. There is no age where you're too old to go pursue a passion. I don't believe that. You could be 60 and go pursue your passion. But try to learn from this and understand that, capitalize on those years where, like, from 18 to 25 or whatever, when you're living with your parents. You imagine how many, I would be so much further in business if, instead of buying video games and every new sneaker and going out every weekend with the friends, if I would have just dumped all that money into my passion. I'd be so much further today, because that's the time where you have to take risks. It's like when we went to go get an office space, it's like, man, office space is like 1,100 a month, and I got a mortgage and I got kids. But when you're a kid living at home, that $1,100 is nothing. That'll be your only responsibility. That's it. So it's like you're more prone to take that risk. It's safer to take that risk at that time. Not that you can't do it as an adult, but I would tell kids, do it now. Go pursue that business now. Go fail now. Get all the failures out the way, because you're gonna fail regardless. So get them all out the way while you're 18 years old. That way, by the time you're 30, you've got this figured out a whole lot better. Luckily, I feel like I got it. I got kind of a grasp on things now at 36. I don't have it all figured out. There's a lot more I need to learn, and I'm still bumping my head. But I got a way better idea what I'm doing than I did at 21.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny to see how these things have culminated, because when we were younger, um, I mean, you and I were hard headed, like, bro. There's no other way to put it. And a lot of times people get stuck in this, like, I know what I'm doing, and whatever works for you isn't necessarily going to work for me, and um and we're never going to be able to force, no matter how much we want to, if we want to, we're never going to be able to force um our own maturities on our children. But I'm starting to learn that, like, growing up, um I never knew what financial literacy was.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And now I'm teaching my children that.
Right.
Now, I will say, kind of going back to earlier conversation, how you were saying, like, it's beautiful to watch your children grow, and you start to see that those different personalities, and it's just like, wow, they're not all just like three copy and pasted people. It's, there's so many differences to them. And I have one of my children that is very financially sound, and the other two not so much, but we're working on it. But
Right.
we're in that learning process, right?
Right.
Getting them to understand that there's more to life. When we think about legacy, right? When we think about all of these things, you got to sit back and for us as fathers, for us as creatives, for us as intellectuals, right? We got to sit back and we got to say, um, how how can we raise the ceiling for
Right.
them? To stand and raise the ceiling for the next generation. Um, I think that you and I were fortunate enough to have parents that were invested in raising a ceiling for us, to then go ahead and keep the building going. And maybe not everyone has that same experience, but it's an interesting thing navigating life and doing that for them, so that they have an opportunity to grow from where we went, or from where we started.
No, for sure. That's what it's all about, man. Exactly like you said, we got to raise the ceiling. That's what are we doing it for? At least that's how I'm wired, right? The next generation has to do better, has to be better. And I tell people, to kind of to answer the kind of jaded, pessimistic question that you hear sometimes from certain adults. They say, well, what if they, to put it vulgar, what if they piss it all away? Say, well, you know what? It's not going to be for lack of me not trying. It's going to be, I'm going to do everything I can. They can throw away every opportunity they want. That's on them. When I'm dead and gone, they will answer for their own lives and their own kids. While I'm alive, I'm gonna do whatever I can to raise the ceiling. So I hear you 100%, man. But that's dope. We gotta keep these things going, man. I'm glad I finally got to do something creative with you again. The music is gonna come back. There's gonna be more of these, and I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you being next to me for this many years, man. It's like we can go a long time without speaking and we pick it right back up like it never stopped. I appreciate you for that, man.
Yeah, I think you're one of the only people that I've had that experience with, where it's just like, and literally we've gone years without speaking, and then the minute that we talk, it's just like, it's like, yo, as if we just talked yesterday. I definitely would love to talk with you offline about doing other things, and building a little bit more. But
Yeah,
man, whenever you want me on here, bro, like, I love this. I
yeah,
love
man.
this, and I love what you're doing, and I can't wait to see this continue.